How many of you have seen the VSD, Virtual Services Directory UI, the UI itself? Kinda, yeah?
Yes. A lot of people are new, so.
Okay, so I'll try to kind of give you a bit of a view of that. And before I get into that UI, I would like to suggest that whatever you see in the UI is consumable. It's consumable through an API structure that we have. Our UI is a client of our policy server, and it's consuming the same APIs that a third-party system would consume. So Neil, you're going to talk about VSPK and okay. So we have an SDK that is Python based as well for the automation of that API structures. So the first thing you log in, and you log in as for those who have not seen the VSD UI, Virtualized Services Architect, you log in as a role. You're either a root user of the system or you're an enterprise administrator, at which point you jump into that enterprise context only. If you're a root system user, you see all enterprises. Okay? So we create multi-tenancy, and depends on how you log in and what credentials you pass in and domains you log in, if you like. That's how you get put into your own context. That's the first step. So I logged in as a root user. I can see everybody. And we're modeled something called Acme Inc., for the lack of more imagination and creativity, because as you do, not to offend anybody. But Acme Inc. is really just an enterprise. We can create other enterprises or new organizations, and we could call them. Okay, here comes the kind of imagination thing. So if you've got an enterprise name you would like to.
Yoyodyne.
Yoyodyne?
Yeah.
Yo-yo, and there's space?
No, one word, obviously.
Yeah.
Y-N-E.
Yeah? Okay.
Obviously.
I want to say, do we want to give you full power to do stuff within your own enterprise, or is that too dangerous?
Oh, I think that's for us.
Full power is good. Full power is good. Okay. You can use LDAP. You can create local user base, but essentially you set your own. At that point, actually, I'll give you access. So I can log out, jump in as admin, and at your time. So did I get that right?
N.
And now I only see you. You see yourself. You don't see other enterprises. Before you could see the multiple enterprises I was logged in as root. Now I'm in your environment, and now you can start creating things in that environment. Okay? You can create networking objects. You can create applications. These are application designer functions. These are APN, VPN designer functions. Can you guys see that?
Could you just move the left-hand side of the window across about half a centimetre? What's that about? Half an inch would be great.
Let me just maybe make that a little.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, make it a little smaller.
Smaller, and I'm going to
shift it back over. Just the screen, the display's chopping off the left-hand side. You see up there. So
How's that?
That's the baby. Thank you very much.
But at some point I would have to see the right-hand side for the demo. Okay.
Yeah, it's overrated. Okay.
Well, the demo now.
No.
All right. Okay. I mean that's fine.
That's good.
That's good. Okay. So let's jump into the demos. And we will. If you guys got questions through the demo to explain the UI, let's do that and let's move it up. Yeah. So CSP root. And there was a question about app designer. So I've created a couple of apps here. Essentially, you jump in and you create an app. And let's call it, I want to call it my app. And I want to give it access to a particular domain. We call it QA domains because I want to do it a dev app. For example, I want to do a production app. Okay, so I'll find and I start dropping my T's in. This is an application developer consuming the system, interacting with the system.
So we should use small words.
Okay. How about T1? Here we go. And I want anybody within my domain to access to my app. And I want it to kind of connect. Oops. only via HTTPS on the front end. Okay? And then I want to add, maybe to keep it simple, a second tier, and that's maybe my DB tier. And on that tier, I want communication to happen only on a MySQL port, because it's a MySQL database. That's it. You may not define that. The system goes and starts creating networking constructs. A tier is created when it creates a subnet, right? The communication between subnets, a DB subnet, a web subnet, the arrow between them creates security policies. Between subnet 1 to subnet 2, what protocols can traverse that connection? And essentially what I've just created is my own domain, my own layer 3 domain with 2 subnets and a bunch of communication rules that govern that application.
So can I ask, has someone behind the scenes ahead of time set up the policies for whenever, an application connects via whatever?
Now these are runtime interpolated, right? So if I go here, so the answer is, if you can see what's just happened here, I just created a new QA domain. I've created my app, which is a secure. It's a zone, what we call a zone. My app lives in the QA zone. Only QA people could talk to it. And these 2 tiers, each tier sitting on its own subnet. And now the minute I launch a VM into that tier, it will auto-resolve and auto be plumbed into the appropriate tier. So if I launch a web VM, and I specify they should log in as I specify through our CMS integration portfolio, VMware, OpenStack, CloudStack, and the Nuage plugins, as you specify, I want to connect to my app on tier 1. As the VM comes up, our agent will pick that up and resolve the policy, connecting it only to tier 1. And then your tiers are, you essentially, as you launch up your VMs, you can start communicating. That make sense? Okay. So I think I've got the signal of time, so I'm going to continue unless there's any other questions. But what I really want to do is introduce the concept. So we talked about application designer. I want to talk about VPN designer. So we have an existing VPN, I call it the wide area network, again, very creative, that belongs to an enterprise. And now we have a couple of sites scattered around the world. We have a store, and the store might be a retail store under the Acme Corporation. And that store is already bootstrapped and connected to my network. It's green, if you can see it on the right-hand side. That's that store right there on the right-hand side. We have created, we have what we call bootstrapped it into the network, and it's connected and communicating with our data center. The demo is going to talk about how we bring up a new site, bootstrap that second site up. So let's kind of bring a site up, and we want to do it maybe at 755 Ravendale Drive, Mountain View. We want to bring it here, and I think we are kind of all sitting here. I'll put it in our building. Theoretically, it should be appearing somewhere here. It's somewhere there. Okay. Okay. And I've associated already an installer at that site. And what we're going to demonstrate, before in the video you've seen a 2-factor authentication system. And I'll talk about why that's required. We're going to demonstrate 0-factor, which means that the device comes online by itself. There's no person at that site outside of connecting the cables required to do anything. It's a 0-factor different. So send an activation. And essentially what happens is, it's a blank box, you deliver it, right? And it comes with no configuration whatsoever. It's with the base, vanilla, no custom. We ship that out that way. You don't have to pre-configure anything at yours. It's a drop ship model, right? So you take a USB that you get along with it, and I'll talk about what that means. And you connect it in, and you power the device. We've connected the WAN, already connected the Wi-Fi points in the branch, and my laptop is a client. Okay? And the system will start coming up and bootstrapping. I mentioned before the importance of flexibility. So we have 0-factor, the system automatically bootstraps and comes up. We have one factor where you send a confirmation email to a person who clicks on a link and bootstraps the device. That's if you kind of trust the person and he has the expertise to do so. And the last, we have two-factor. So if you don't trust the person as well, you challenge him with a one-time password. You have three models of bootstrapping a device, depending if you are sitting in one of the banking guys, when I spoke in that discussion, they have some sites that the device sits locked in a cabinet. It's physically secure, so they want bootstrapping to happen automatically. Some retail stores actually are wide open. They're scared that somebody walks into the store, pulls the device, goes home. So they want to authenticate that. They want to make sure that that happens. Okay. So there's different use cases for that. And so now I started kind of bootstrapping the device. We can go and start developing what we call, the first thing that I would suggest is we start developing and building the concept of an enterprise division structure. You may have an enterprise, you have engineering users, finance users, guest users for guest Wi-Fi at a kind of a Starbucks-like facility, if you like. Human resources or retail people selling, depending on the type of enterprise you're at. And you want to say, you know what, guest users can get access to some CRM system. Retail users can get access to my corporate web environments, but not guest users. So you start defining now which users can access what applications in your organizational model of the enterprise. That's what we call divisions. We also have the concept of communities. Think of divisions as user communities that have a common set of interests, a common set of security boundaries, right? And then think of user groups. You have in a branch, for example, you have a specific user group. Guests might be a particular user group. NFD 10 might be a user group that might come and go. Nuage engineering is another user group. So user groups come together to create user communities. And it's all about defining who can get access to what. So far, I've not defined one networking piece. I haven't spoken about routers, switches. I'm defining and designing my VPN. Okay? Right? And I want to say maybe port 1 is the corporate LAN ports that only allow employees. Got port 2 and should have access to maybe to retail selections, to the retail people at that branch. My guests, well, how about I give them access to my Wi-Fi only, because it's a local Wi-Fi, and I give it to a division called guests. Okay? That kind of making sense so far? So, as this thing kind of finishes coming up, I want to spend some time talking about what happens behind the scene. Look what happens behind the scene. I just defined a new store 2. And that spawned up a whole bunch of subnets, routing domains, people who could connect to what, ACLs have been spawned up all in the back end. The system interpreted by my definition that that's exactly what I want to do. And it created that and pushed that configuration down to this device. So port 2, for example, if you remember, can access my Wi-Fi only. Port 3 in our definition is my client, a corporate client. Is that making sense? Yeah.
Are these pulled from pools, or is there some sort of a schema that you're deriving these addresses from, and the VLAN configurations and the ACLs?
Excellent. The system actually derives it from pools, okay? And it gives the user the ability, if you want to customize the pool, to customize it. But we have on the concept at the bottom right, concept of site templates. You create your site template and you keep instantiating the same site template. Okay? So you may want to suggest that I have a small branch and I want to use only 2 subnets and just pull it in, it'll automatically do that. Right? And you might have a medium or large branch that comes together and you template that out.
How are you separating these ports? Are they like in different namespaces, or how are you doing this for most of it?
Within the single device, we leverage our OVS capabilities that we have introduced in the data center. So Neil talked about forwarding engine being multi-tenanted, if you like, VRF aware. So we have logical separation as we create multiple IPVPNs, we create multiple VRFs in a device. Now, each subnet we represent it as a layer 2 EVPN construct. So, and that, think of it like an MPLS world, if you guys are familiar, for the MPLS guys. It's like a VPLS network that connects at the backend to an IPVPN solution. And then all we do is plumb the access ports, which are either port VLAN or actually 5 tuple definitions, into those. So once you connect, that's how you create the service constructs. Now the communication between the devices, between different subnets, we apply the ACLs at each one of those. We have ingress, egress ACLs that we apply that are interpolated by the system depending on the user to application or user to user definitions that I just did. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. I figured it was all the logic was done on the box / or namespaces, but it makes total sense that they're separated in EVPN the way you did it with the data center.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And if you look at the terminology that I'm using, actually, these are the same terminologies that we have introduced in the data center. So if you want to think of this device as a general purpose compute with a Nuage agent running on it, and instead of kind of spinning up VMs, it's actually connecting physical ports and logical ports. And then we'll talk about the next demo, what it could actually do in terms of applications. Okay, is that
Now, do you do like, I don't even know if it applies here, like user authentication, tie in the Active Directory, LDAP, any kind of auth?
Okay, so
I mean, is there a need for it on this? I mean, I'm thinking.
that's a good question. So some especially around the Wi-Fi access points, they already perform added to the 1X and do all kind of NAC-like devices, and they do that on the front end. You want to do this a lot of it actually at the switching layer in the site, right where the user connects. If you're doing things out at the kind of at the routing endpoint that lives, you already, if there's a rogue user, he's already compromising inside the LAN. So I think it's a combination. Are there use cases that have required that and that? Absolutely. But the main use cases that we are seeing today is that this is an existing implementation that happens right at the connection point of the user in the branch. Okay. So the site has come up. It's green, and it's self-bootstrapped. Okay. And theoretically, if I can bring this up, this is a client that connects to that site. And this site, I gave it permission to access from port 3. If you remember, it was my corporate site, retail users, they can access my corporate application. So I built a corporate application called IntraWeb, which is just a front-end solution. And here it is. So now that user has come up, connected, this client connected in the branch, talking to an application in the data center, without yet defining a single kind of networking construct, if you get that.
Well, you actually are. There's not.
That's exactly right.
GUIs behind the.
Absolutely, you're right. Absolutely, exactly. I think, that's exactly right. And the system interpolated those constructs for the user and on behalf of the user. Exactly right. I think that's the power of the system that I'm trying to kind of demonstrate today on that demo. And if we go into the system, we can start creating blocking entries to block this. So let's say deny user. Wanna go from store 2, let's say, talking to my IntraWeb. I should actually search it. IntraWeb tier. And I might want to just drop that. So if you can see, I don't know if you can see the bottom, it's connecting, but it's not connected. I just enforced a policy at the branch, stopping and talking to my introvert. So if I kind of blank that out, right, and then enable that on this screen now, you want to see that come up. Dynamic policy distribution for users and application control from a single policy system. Okay?
An indication on that screen as to whether or not it's been activated on the end device. So you make the change, you go back to that screen, to know when it's come up. Do you get the confirmation there, or is it another way of validating?
Absolutely. We have so Neil talked about a virtual services VSAP, a virtual services assurance platform, and that really does all the auditing for you. We also have an ACL logging capability that this device export the logs of which users are hitting what ACLs. So there's a whole analytics visibility dashboard framework that I have not to the time yet demonstrated, but absolutely.
I was thinking it'd be nice to be able to say, I've made the change and it's been activated, and have that confirmation that it has actually been deployed and the end device has accepted it and put it in place, and
Agree.
you get the thumbs back up without having to then go to another tool and run an audit against a site. I just want to see the thing go green, it's live, because I'm like that. So,
Okay, so I think this is kind of the extent of the first demo. It's going to show how we've communicated what we're doing, how we bootstrap the site, and how we define a user to application configuration.
seems to me that having a good naming policy for your objects is going to be critical from the start.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, those lists are going to become impenetrable.
Okay.
I mean, really, right? It's
So that's, I think we've done that. So what I've shown you, what we really have shown is a VPN designer that allows now, as well as dealing with the application world that we've introduced and demonstrated before on NFT8, we're now moved into the kind of where users are, which are outside the data center, and giving you that same layer of abstraction. All of being now vertically layered, not just horizontally layered, not just only multi-tenanted, but also vertically. All done from a centralized policy system by zero touch, one touch, two touch, or two factor, one factor, two factor, and zero factor solution. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
If we did two-factor authentication and someone came and, so it was on the network,
Right.
somebody came and took the box away, how, maybe I missed it, but
Absolutely.
How does that work?
Absolutely. I think the security, and we kind of alluded to it a bit earlier, I think the security of the device we put a lot of effort into for one, and actually depending as you talk to some of our customers which are very security sensitive, that question definitely comes up. So the device connects to our controller. We have a control session continuously monitoring that device. And you're able, as a network administrator, you're able to define a deactivation time. If things change, if the device is picked up and moved, or the device has not been connected to the controller for a while,
Yeah.
what would you like to do? Do you want to trust that device? Do you want to kill it and therefore disconnect it? Our devices are stateless. The minute they disconnect from the system, they erase all configuration.
Okay.
And then when they connect back into the system, they download the configuration again. You have options in that. You may leave it persistent, you may leave it non-persistent. For more security sensitive applications, we hear our customers requesting for a totally stateless system. We do not want persist configuration, because if the device is gone walkabouts, we don't know where it is. Therefore, we don't want anybody to open up the device and then get access to our networking configuration. And as we put more things on, as you'll see, we don't want them to know what we did, how we did it. So we blank out the configuration. We also have a PKI X509 system to make sure that we authenticate, authorize. The certificates are tied to the device themselves. You cannot walk in there, grab the software image, load it up on your own device, and away you go. Because the signature matches will fail, and we tied. So we've kind of walked through the security profiles, and some of our customers have been made sure that we have, to make sure that we have walked through all that.
You've effectively got the same problem that any other device does, because having a non-static config is great. Okay, so someone can't see your config, but the moment they plug it in somewhere else, so long as they do it within the idle period, the config's back. Right, and the certificate on the device is great. Okay, so I can't copy the software, but if I steal the device, it doesn't matter because I've got it.
Absolutely.
And I don't know how you or anyone else would necessarily fix that, unless you say you must have a static IP, and if your WAN IP changes, then you go back into lockdown mode or something.
Absolutely.
That too?
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking that idle time is great until your site has a power cut for 12 hours. And then they come back up, the power's great, we don't have any WAN. Oh, we need to send someone. Then you're back into two-factor again with someone who was sent out there to put the box in the first place. And
as you peer with our controllers, we have two options. We have an auto-join, auto-peer-like model, and we have device-specific definition. You can only join from that IP address. If somebody comes from a different IP address, there'll be no policies to attach him, he'll be rejected.
Okay, that's good.
So
that's more like it.
Use the product. Good. Thank you. Excellent.
What do you support for multiple WAN connections? Can you have 2 or 3 WAN connections going out of this box? And
right. Absolutely.
Policy routing and things like that?
Exactly right. So these multiple WAN devices plus USB. We see the WAN, if you can see, I know you can't see on this, but there's 2 WAN wide and there's USB, and USB allows us to integrate LTE type functionality to kind of offload that. Yeah, absolutely.